Now let's take a look at some of the other settings that we can choose for our brushes as we sculpt. So if we come over to, instead of tools, the options, you'll see that there are a couple of sections here. There's an overlay, there's options, and then appearance. If you come down to appearance, you'll see that there's this checkbox for show brush. And as we've been sculpting, we've always been able to see the brush represented by this pink circle right here. If we change the brush size, you can see the pink circle changes, as well as the preview of the texture underneath. So if we turn this off, we don't get that preview anymore, which may be what you want. I kind of like it on, so I'm going to leave that on. We also get an indicator of whether we're going to add or subtract based on the color. So we've got pink or blue for add or subtract, and so knowing that this is pink, when I sculpt, it's going to add it out or add it, and then holding down Control when I sculpt, it's blue, telling me that it's going to actually subtract it. So we can come in and change those colors if you want to modify those colors to indicate whether you're going to be adding to the model or subtracting from it. You can also add a custom icon. We can also add gravity to our sculpt. So for instance, if we were to, let me just pull this texture out, and let me get kind of a smaller size here, but maybe a little bit stronger. Maybe not that strong. So you can see as I sculpt, this is being pulled out from the surface. But if I go back to options and I turn on gravity, let's just do halfway, you can see that that's now pulling it down. So let me reduce this amount a little bit. So instead of pulling it straight out, it's pulling it out, but it's also pulling it down. So let me reduce the factor there. And so, you know, if you're doing some kind of drooping flesh or things like that, you can have that gravity sort of built in so that you don't have to worry about, you know, pulling it in a particular direction. Whatever you sculpt, gravity is going to kind of pull it down. Oops. So let me select back that. Okay, and so that's located here under the gravity factor, and you can change that up or down depending on the settings that you want. We also have a setting for unified settings. So right now only size is selected. So that means when I have that size selected, if my brush is this size using this particular brush, if I now come over to clay strips, my brush size is going to be the same. If I turn off that and I come in here and change the brush size for this particular brush, and now go back to Sculpt Draw, I'm going to be back to that normal size. So the size does not carry over between the different sculpting tools unless I have this on. Now right now it's set to size, but you could also set it to strength so that whenever you move between brushes, your strength remains consistent as well. If you don't have that on, then you can set a custom strength for every brush that you're using, but your size will remain the same, and you'll have to change it if you want to modify that. Okay, and that's located here under our options as well. We also have the ability to turn on Fast Navigate, so that will allow you to, as you're moving around, it'll allow you to change back to a very low resolution display of your lower level until you get to a static point where you can begin sculpting again. So it can kind of speed things up, especially if you're working with a subdivision, you know, levels that are making it harder and harder to actually work. Okay, and that's Fast Navigate right up there in our options. So the last thing that I want to talk about is using dynamic topology. That's going to be this section right down here. This can be good for when you don't really know the shapes that you want to create and you want to build those up, but you want to use a sculpting workflow to do that. So we'll finish up by talking about how to use the dynamic topology function here in Blender.